Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Tired of stories about other people's success? We can help you change your life, determine your time freedom point, and join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Ideal Investor Show, where we bring you interesting guests to show us what can we do, how can we improve our life, how can we generate passive income or get into a different career. And today we have a special guest with us. Sophie Howard is with us. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Axel. Great to be here. Thank you for having me on your fantastic show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're just around 100 shows right now. So, we've been doing it for a little while. So I'm glad to have you and talk with you a little bit about Freedom Navigator. But before we do that, can you give us a little bit, how did you actually get into what you're doing these days?
Well, I was working really hard in my day job and had a toddler and a baby, and probably like lots of other mothers who are, not getting much sleep, not doing a great job at the day job and generally hating it all, and just really hard trying to hold that day job together and look like you've got your act together at work. It was really hard. So working, all the time, and decided I had to do something different. So I started an online business when my daughter was about 3 months old, and haven't stopped. So that's nearly 10 years ago now. So I started out by selling products on Amazon, which was all the rage back in the 2000 teens, whenever they were, 2012 or something, I started that. And it went really well. I think I had a bit of beginner's luck, but I chose a good product. It was really high quality. It sold like crazy. Made a lot of money and sold the whole company, or that brand. Didn't sell the company, sold the brand for over $1 million. And then I sold another Amazon brand. Then I did some coaching, helping people choose Amazon brands. And that was going great. I was really enjoying the quality of the products and not sourcing junk from China. So I just always did things a bit differently to the main pack. So even when Amazon got pretty crowded with physical products, mine were always usually pretty good. But COVID meant, supply chains might get a bit sketchy. I'd better find something else to do. So I started publishing ebooks. Okay. But I didn't really know much about publishing. I'd written one kind of lightish weight book on how to sell products on Amazon, and it had been selling quite well. So I started figuring out how to sell ebooks on Amazon. How hard could it be? But it turns out you could do non-fiction books really easily. I cracked that, and then decided fiction was where a lot of the money was. So I bought I bought a fiction business off a site called Empire Flippers, and it was quite a big business, but it came with like all these authors and marketing systems and standard operating procedures. And where in the past I'd have had months, if not years, of trial and error, I just bought this business and it worked, and it's still profitable now. And it was really easy. And I learned something. I'd actually only bought it to learn how to do something. So this was a revelation. I decided I needed to buy more businesses. And then I've been a bit hooked. So I bought a newsletter for authors business. And then I've bought some software for authors business. And then I did some completely unrelated ones. I bought a site all about learning to play the guitar. And the last one I bought is all about UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which is like a travel blog.
Yeah, that's cool.
Unrelated, but they're really cool businesses. Most of them, the business model you would call a content site. So built on WordPress, ads down the side or ads in the middle, and then links that when you click on them, I earn some affiliate commission. So they're pretty low tech businesses. I'm not, developing great big software package things or anything like that. It's pretty simple business models, but I've just gone out really deliberately looking for businesses to buy. And that's what I've been doing for about 3 years now. I've bought 30 online businesses, in fact, over 30 now. And I haven't had any disasters. There were a few things that made me nervous going into it as a new strategy, because basically you pay cash for these. Some have been bigger than others. I did one big one quite early on, but I did a lot of small ones to figure out a good system and how to look for the right metrics and how to negotiate and where to buy them from. I've got all that pretty much figured out. But the interesting thing has been just how many good buys there are out there. There's some very, very motivated sellers who just started a blog years ago that's now really undervalued and really underutilized, and absolute goldmine for me, or people like me looking to buy businesses. So you can start quite small, but the upside's really high, and you don't need to be very techie, and you certainly don't need a huge budget to start. You don't need to be techie, but you need to be a little bit sort of tech accepting. You need to maybe learn a couple of things about the site you buy. but you don't need a tech background. You just need to sort of have a good attitude to a little bit of basic learning and figure out what you need to outsource and at least understand what you've outsourced. I mean, I can't write a word of WordPress code. I couldn't do a thing on these sites. Wouldn't know how to set up the ads or anything like that. But luckily, in these wonderful modern online times, there's a whole world out there of great freelancers who are really good at driving WordPress or setting up a Google ad link thing, whatever they call it. They do all of that.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, somebody listening to us might say, well, it's easy for Sophie to say because she sold a business for a couple million and could try around and basically discover how to do it right and so forth. How would that look like if somebody, you said at the very beginning, you were frustrated or somewhat unhappy with your regular job and wanted to do something different? I think there are quite a few people out there who would say, yep, that's kind of what I'm to a certain degree. How is it for somebody like that who doesn't have the benefit of early Amazon? Because before you answer, I want to say this seems to be a little bit of a theme. At least I believe I'm discovering this. I've heard this from like you now and others about early Amazon. I've heard it from early eBay. I've heard it from, in my own experience, quote unquote, early YouTube. Because I've been told so many times that we're putting out really, really good content on YouTube, but basically very little engagement or community building unless we were to basically focus almost exclusively on it. But then when I interview somebody who's been on YouTube for like 6 or 8 years and they said, oh, yeah, it was so much easier when we first started. So that seems to be a little bit of a theme. But if somebody were to say, okay, I listened to these guys and Sophie made such a good case, how do you do it if you don't have a chunk of money already sitting somewhere that you can risk, so to speak, and say, yeah, okay, I want to try this?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I do always try to remember how hard it was for me starting. And then back then it looked hard. And I do appreciate now it was easier then than it would be now starting on Amazon. So I never go where the big crowds are. I don't want to be going head to head with somebody who's giving away a container of an identical product to launch and rank on Amazon and paying people for reviews. And there's some really seedy tactics going on some of these big platforms. But what I like about the WordPress sites is that sort of Google rules them all. And Google is always about the user experience. In fact, Amazon's about the customer experience as well. So anytime those big platforms tighten things up, it's to get rid of bad actors and make the customer experience good, usually two things at the same time. So with the content sites, like having a little WordPress site that's ranked on Google, you can start with a search term and try and, have a huge budget and a huge marketing team and get to the top of page 1 for ketogenic diets.
Yeah.
But I'm currently focused on ranking my article about some cave in India, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So you don't need a very big budget for that. So in the case of that one, this cave in India is very special, apparently. So people want to visit it. There's not that many articles written about it. All the information about the history and the archaeology and the cultural significance of these caves and why it's a World Heritage Site. There's pages and pages all around this on the internet, on Wikipedia, on Indian archaeology sites, So what I've done is had one article done that's optimized for this particular one site. And so it's a long tail keyword. It's not a competitive or popular keyword.
Right.
And so I've just got a template. There's over 1,100 of these sites, these World Heritage sites. So each one starts, here's the history. And then what I do is a really simple, here's how to get here. Here's how to book your tickets. And I've got writers. In fact, on the whiteboard behind me, I've got my 6, you can see it here. Got my 6 writers. They're in different countries. They work, those 1,000-word articles cost me, a few tens of dollars, if that. They're really low cost and I could actually do them myself. So you've got the option to DIY it if you've got a day job and you're really struggling for cash flow. And you could just buy a basic older domain that's sort of been ranked by Google but hasn't got lots of cash flow attached. So you buy it at a very low price off a trusted platform like Flipper. So Flipper checks out all the analytics on a website that's for sale. So you can buy a low cost domain, like a website URL, buy a cheap one, and then you can just add one article a week that you write yourself for 1,000 words in your spare time and sort of learn by doing. And there's loads of good education out there on how to sort of write those blogs or optimize the keywords in those blogs. Or better, I reckon, if you're in a Western country with a day job, even with the cost of living crunch, you're better to pay a few tens of dollars to someone to do that for you, and it lets you scale up, and they're probably specialized in it. And you won't need to spend the time learning as well as doing. They'll just do the doing. So you can't possibly be a whiz on WordPress tech and SEO and be a great writer and keep up with what's happening on AI and keep up with what Google's after in its algorithm, because Google's going to penalize people churning out junk on AI. That's what the last Google update did. Never thought I'd be on a podcast talking about Google updates because I don't really follow the tech side so much. My strategy is just to buy businesses that can be profitable through having quality content. So I can't possibly write them all or look at every algorithm change in detail. I just have to have websites in niches that have kind of got commercial potential and hire a little team of writers who send in these articles. We upload them once a week or twice a week maybe, and the links all start adding up to earn a new income stream.
And that's actually one of the other questions. I'm glad that you kind of built the segue for that. One of the other questions I wanted to ask is this whole article writing SEO consideration kind of space. We did a little while ago, a little bit of like just an exploration, I would call it, going to like Upwork and places like that. And I'm really curious. I mean, you showed your list with the 6 writers that you trust and that you work with. How does somebody who is now intrigued to say, okay, well, I'm going to get the Freedom Navigator book and I'm going to read and find, as I did, you have actually the URLs of the different places where you can find those websites in the book. Teaser, you have to get the book. But how do you then, because I really mean this seriously, I was totally shocked. I think we had something about like optimizing or trying to optimize the SEO for our real estate related YouTube channel. And there were like dozens and dozens and dozens of people, always nice little ads and supposedly endless experience and stuff. And we said, okay, if we really want to make this seriously, we just dedicate a little bit of a tiny, well, admittedly tiny budget, but somewhat of a small budget just to give some of them an opportunity. And obviously I didn't know Sophie until today. So we must have been either hugely unlucky or did something wrong, because what we ended up with was a lot of, for YouTube, and this is maybe a little bit different than what you do, but on YouTube, we got all kinds of people subscribing to the channel, never posting anything. And then I did a little bit additional research and found out, oh yeah, there are all kinds of people who have these communities where they trade subscriptions with each other. So you get 1,000 subscribers or maybe whatever, but you don't get any view time. And obviously Google has figured this out and says, okay, yeah, you need at least 1,000 subscribers. But if you don't have 4,000 hours of view time, it doesn't matter. And these guys just click subscribe and never show up again in their life, know? So how do you, from these dozens and dozens, and I'm sure there are actually hundreds or even thousands, figure out the 6 on your wall there?
Magic 6. Well, there's obviously slightly different games to play for all the different platforms out there. And so something like a designer or a writer or a virtual assistant. I mean, I think when I last looked on Upwork, I think I must have spent maybe a few $100,000 on an average on pretty low hourly rate, hiring different freelancers. I've had people doing packaging design for Amazon products or logistics assistants for Amazon products, right through to, assistants helping me with coaching, hiring coaches in my Amazon business, writers from Upwork for books, all sorts over the years. So I've used Upwork a lot. It's still my favorite platform over Fiverr. I get my book illustrations done on Fiverr. My strategy is basically I write a pretty short job description. I tick the intermediate level and I say there's the option for ongoing work for the right candidate. Yeah. Because if I do find someone really useful all round, who's a good fast learner and, a good hourly rate and reliable, they could learn any skill. So I kind of keep a pretty open job description. I overhire. So I'll hire, if I want 6 writers, I'll hire 12 and give them an identical brief. Here's a brief for 1,000-word article. Here's your budget. Here's your deadline. Put these 3 things in it. I want 3 photos of that cave. Yeah. There's loads on that cave. Such a good cave. You should all go. If you want to go, let me know. I'll give you some tips. And then at the bottom, some affiliate links. So I asked them to do a little bit of a basic thing and a few advanced things. And out of that 12, a couple will do a great job and I'll keep those. And the others, 2 won't come back to you at all. 3 will write something with AI. It's a bit of a process, but it's worth a bit of short-term work to do a good job of outsourcing and building a team. So I've got a course where I teach people how to buy online businesses, like how to set your budget and your criteria, then where to look and how to buy a good deal, how to look for them, what's a good deal, what to watch out for, and then how to negotiate, how to take over the site. And then we also, and I don't think anyone else really does this, we also teach you how to start building your own team. So we do a kind of an action plan for anybody who wants some help growing their business. They might buy something where they've bought a bigger business than what we've talked about so far today. They buy a business for 50K and this becomes their job, it earns enough income that they run it. They eventually quit their day job and they're buying themselves another opportunity that's not working for someone else. So those slightly bigger deals, you'll generally be putting more time and learning in yourself and need a little team under you eventually, maybe a team of writers, maybe you need a social media person or a designer or someone who, social media is a thing you wouldn't really want to do yourself long term because it's cheap to outsource. So we can teach people how to hire quality people on Upwork. But also with some of these businesses, one of the questions you would ask the seller is who's been doing all the writing for this site and can I continue them on and hire them? And often I've inherited a team when I've bought a business. So the last few businesses I've bought, I've inherited writers or an operations manager or an author or a social media person or a designer with that business. And they've just stayed on. And sometimes I've given them a bit of a pay rise to sweeten the deal for them to come over. But so much easier for me to have someone who knows what's already got to be done each week. So that's always worked out well as well.
Yeah, and you're really brilliant in building these bridges to questions that I would have asked you anyway, because because the next one was, 2, and you hinted on one already. The one, maybe we should get that out of the way real quick. What's the range of costs for those kind of online sites, that people would be looking at?
So this bottom line is basically zero. You can buy a domain name that has no existing income for pennies.
Right. Yeah, obviously.
Then it's sort of 5K. You would have a little site. It's been around for a few years. It's got some traffic coming to it. It's got a little bit of income from some ads. It'll have some articles already written. Google will have clocked some relevant keywords for it. So I think in that sort of 3 to 5K, you're not retiring from your day job this year, but you're learning the ropes. You're getting the process. You're getting a team together. You're seeing how it works and, get a bit more confident with all the processes if it's the first time you've done it. So even if you've got a big budget, start with sort of a 5K site. That seems to be the magic number where there's a bit of income and a bit of quality. And then basically the way the bigger ones are valued, it's usually 2 to 3 times the annual profit of the business. So if the business makes 50K profit a year, it would be valued at 100 or 150K to purchase upfront all cash. Sometimes the vendors will know that you can't go to the bank and get out a loan or put that much on your credit card. So they'll say, okay, well, pay me 50 now, 50 in 6 months, 50 in another 6 months. And that happens quite a lot. So the vendor basically finances you buying it in installments, and they don't usually charge interest. I've never had to pay interest on those installment plans.
I mean, if the financials, let's call it, are true, right, and you say, okay, I'm paying 3 times, I mean, even if it's less than 3 years, that would just put proof in the pudding that, yes, initially you're not really making money, but it's kind of paying for itself in a sense.
Yeah. And if you grow that business, say it's valued at 150K, to pick a round number, because it makes 50K profit a year, well, that 50K profit, that goes quite a way to replacing a salary. So maybe you get to work part-time, or you spend some of your evenings really motivated because you just spent a lot of money buying a nice site, and maybe hire a little team. And then you could grow that. Maybe you double it in the first year. So you kind of make 100K in the first year and you've paid it back in a year and a bit. Yeah. Amazing payback period compared to real estate or anything else. Plus, not only is it liquid, it's got good cash flow. You've got no cap on the upside of the growth. You can't buy a house and quadruple or 10x the rent. And you've got 20 odd years of mortgage to pay. So the numbers are insane in terms of growth potential, short payback periods. That return on investment is fantastic. And it's not speculating like crypto or racehorses.
So you said like the low end starting point is maybe 3,000 to 5,000 or something like that, and then you jump to 150. Is there anything in between, or is that kind of?
Yeah. So I actually had a call yesterday with the CEO of Flipper. So Flipper turns over about $1 billion a year in trading these businesses, because the whole value of the business bounces in and out of their books, even though they don't do all of that. So they sort of see it as 3 tiers of buyers. They've got sort of the side hustle people who've got a day job. Maybe people listening to your show, they've got a day job, they want to get out of it, want to retire in the future, but not right now. So they would buy a smaller starter site, grow it, learn about it, get comfortable with the strategy, and then move into buying bigger ones, or focus all their energies on growing a 5 or 10K or so site. Then you've got what's called the acquisition entrepreneurs. That's sort of what I do. That's sort of the maybe 20K, 50K. Sometimes I'll do one a bit bigger than that, but that's sort of 20 to 50K. There's some really good buys there because there's not as many people in the market looking who can afford it. So I still do a one-on-one, or my team does, one of us, senior guy who's really techie and really, really smart at this stuff. One of the two of us would do a one-on-one deal review with anybody in my program who's looking to buy a business. Even the little ones will do those really thorough deal reviews to check that things all look right, any red flags. We're really better at helping people who've got a bit of budget, because otherwise you're just buying something tiny and it's going to stay tiny forever. But if you're looking to start a new strategy that's got these returns and got this potential, but you need to upskill, you need to do some good deals yourself and get some help doing those, then we can help you with that. And then also building the team around you that you need, or becoming self-sufficient and buying your time back. But I think a better strategy is actually to keep your day job for a bit, buy some of these while you're learning, and then staff them up so you're not doing all the work yourself. Because if you're doing all the work and all of them yourself, you just can't scale. And there's so much good help out there. There's no sort of, even if it's a personal passion project, spend the time researching what else everybody else is doing and what's going on, or get to some conferences, get engaged and involved if you want to, but don't spend it doing the SEO or the social media pages. So
that's what I thought, you would go to at least one of each side on each continent or something.
Oh, I do. How did you guess? I'm actually going to Las Vegas this Sunday for a conference, which isn't
my World Heritage site in Las Vegas?
There is. The desert.
Oh, the desert itself, okay.
Yeah. We're next to Grand Canyon. We've got the canyons.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we basically, you said the low end is like 3 to 5, then 20 to 50, and then the third level is above 100.
The top tier is really interesting. So if you've got some, institutional investor or some, private equity firm who's got, say, $500,000 to spend, they can't get returns like you get off these amazing content sites.
Right.
It's just fantastic cash flow. They're 20-year-old, some sort of software platform or content site, or even a big newsletter that's being commercialized. There's some fantastic assets there, big email lists, engaged audiences. You can buy a lot for your money if you've got a big budget. I don't really have the balls to do those big deals, even if I had the cash.
I only asked that for completion because he said there are 3, and I know my audience, they would say, you said there were 3 and they only mentioned 2. So.
Yeah. No, basically, there's the side hustle, learn by doing. There's the acquisition entrepreneur, buy yourself a job and an opportunity and financial freedom a bit down the track. And then there's the sort of the institutional investor who just come in, very business-like, sort of merger and acquisition and private equity guys who are really strategic and just picking off the big deals. Right. They're rolling up big FBA brands off Amazon and things like that. That's not me. And it's a totally different set of skills. It's all highly financed and totally different.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. Now, one thing that just popped in my mind that happens sometimes when we do podcast interviews is if somebody had like one of those between tier 1 and tier 2 or somewhere in that area side, wouldn't they be better off to say, I just hook up with Sophie and let her show me how to grow this thing rather than selling?
Yeah. So it's always a good question. Why would anybody sell a good website? But a lot of people start blogs. Do you know how many mums start a blog when they go on maternity leave and then abandon it? But Google has, seen all these great bits of advice about cloth nappies or something. So there's loads of abandoned passion projects that, have had traffic, have had quality content, and somebody will really happily take 5 or 10K for them so they can have a holiday because they're exhausted and they just don't realize they don't have time to maintain it. Some people build to sell. There's a deliberate bunch of people who'll build something for 18 months, 2 years, and then sell it deliberately. And then there's
so they basically are after the 3x that they can get.
Yeah. I mean, if you live in India and you've got a great technical background and you've got cheap labor all around you, or your time's cheap, and you've got, good written English, good SEO skills, you can whip one of these things up at no cost over a couple of years and, sell it for tens of thousands of dollars 2 years down the track. It's pretty lucrative work for them. That
I can get in like financially disadvantaged locations, but where the technology, all the people who started hating Infosys and want to do something different, or the call center stuff or so forth. I have to say this is maybe a little bit off the straight line, but I find it sometimes pretty brutal because I know a few larger companies who for a while said, we're going to do all our customer service where it's the cheapest, built huge or bought huge operations in India, hired tons and tons of people, got them through their English qualification training and stuff. And then, we all probably heard these horror stories about, customers starting complaining that it didn't really work because they couldn't understand the person, or they felt, when the customer service person says, before we get started, let's find out if you actually plugged your computer into the socket. Right. And said, okay, I'm not going to talk to that idiot and stuff like that. So literally, the Dells and the HPs and the, even Lenovo and stuff, they all tried it. Yeah. And then stopped it because they could just not handle the amount of. Yeah. And there's a word, but I'm not going to say it out loud. that they received, right? So that was, I think, from a cultural perspective, a pretty brutal approach to say, okay, we know these people are cheap, we can train them, we can take advantage of them in a sense, in my opinion. And when our customers don't like it, then we just abandon them. And I guess the one big benefit they got out of it were a lot of those tech skills that they were supposed to provide.
I can tell you actually on my list of writers. So I put the exact same post up on Upwork. Writer wanted for international travel blog, no travel required, all can be researched from home, need to have SEO skills, perfect written English, not just like quite good, can use AI as long as we check it for facts and quality. So the same brief went out, and I've had Carolyn's Philippines, Rachel's Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Felicity Australia, she's a bit more senior, Sak in Sri Lanka, Ekaterina Bahamas, Sumit India, Anna in Greece. So pretty international crew. So slightly different pay grades for seniority. One will quality control the others, but that's some of those are outsourced countries, but some, one in Australia, she's equivalent to my wages here in New Zealand, but she's really good. The quality has to be good, and I want to seriously grow this site. It's a huge opportunity. So
see, if you were to say to me, I put this post out and I get the returns back, or I let them do something for like one time to see how they actually perform, I really honestly have to say, if I were to do this, it just shows you my ignorance to some extent, but I wouldn't know which one is a good one and not such a good one. Which is a good testament to say we all need to be in Sophie's program if you want to do this. But how do you know, or how did you learn to know which ones are the good ones?
Yeah, well, for years, I've actually used agencies to, teach me what good work looks like for those sorts of posts. So we've got a formula, we've got a template. It's got to have the frequency of the keywords has to be this much, and you need to have this many images, and it needs to read well as a reader. Is it useful? Is it all copied and pasted out of Wikipedia? Have they copied stuff from another site they shouldn't have? Has it been written by AI and it's just full of junk? So I do like to have. It wouldn't
be good enough to say, now that I read this, I want to go to this cave, right? It has to be a little more than that.
It's got to sell that cave. So there are more expensive but total set and forget solutions out there, which are the top content agencies. So we use Content Pit and Word agents for our clients who have just bought a site and need it done well, but not by them, and they don't want to project manage or hire or think too hard. Right. And actually, when we help our students, we teach them how to buy the businesses, which are good sites and have potential and got some interesting upside or nice, interesting, lucrative niche with lots of opportunity. Then we help them do a plan for the content for the year ahead, and then what skills they're going to need from where. Sometimes you just buy a site though and do nothing. You just sit on it. A lot of the sites for sale have had nothing done to them for a few years, and you don't need to do anything else to them. They just sort of tick along. The top articles on Google might need updating every once in a while, but the strategy isn't to grow it. They just want to buy and hold. Yeah, so I think for different budgets and different tech levels or different skill sets and time availability, everybody's so different. So what we just do is with each student coming through, they do a block of core training on the kind of the strategy of how to buy online businesses. And then we have a group live call every week where we all keep up to date on deals people are doing. And we've got a nice kind of confidential closed sort of circuit conversation going on different deals, which is really nice because we learn so much by looking at all these deals together. Who spotted a good deal.
Yeah, very cool. I have 2 more questions before we come to the last 2 questions I asked everybody. But one is, have you, now that you have quite a bit of experience in this, found any kind of particular topic areas where you would say, yeah, those are easier or better or whatever criteria than others?
Oh, that's a good question. What I've learned myself, this is what works for me, is if I buy a site, even if the numbers look fantastic, the income's insane, it's been beautifully built, there's no hitches with it. If I'm not interested in the subject, I can never get that excited about working on it. And so I've just become a bit spoilt in my,
that's exactly
I've got to have a personal interest.
That's the reason I'm asking the question, because I know that our audience is relatively diverse in their interests. Right. And I think this is what you just said is probably true in general. If you want to do something, it should be tickling your passion in some way, or at least kind of related to it. But with that being said, and assuming that would be the case, are there any where you would say, okay, this particular area of topics or kind of topics is easier or is better or is more lucrative, anything like that?
No, I think the way the Google algorithm works and the way the advertising works is your advertising income is just a factor of the amount of traffic on the site. Some affiliate products are really easy. If you've got like a financial services blog and you're recommending some insurance package and people have got a really generous affiliate program on the high end, insurance plans or something, life insurance, you're going to get more income than me on my tickets at the gate of the Indian cave. But I think generally a lot of it's just the volume of traffic. So if you go after a sort of an interesting niche and you get to the top of a small niche, that's sort of easier and more rewarding than being at the bottom of all the life sciences blogs, which are full of huge commercial players who've got a lot to gain. So I try and keep away from corporate competition, I think is one way to put it. And sort of big ticket items that you can recommend so I can recommend a week's tour around Agra to visit the Taj Mahal, which is a UNESCO site, which will, people paying, if I get 10% of all those tours booked, that's great. That adds up a bit. But there's lots and lots of people finding my site who are just looking for information. But I think those really commercial sites are getting penalized by Google now because Google doesn't want to have pages and pages of vacuum cleaner reviews. They actually want some mummy blogger talking about how to keep house and make your house look lovely. They don't want comparison table of the Dyson versus the whatever. They actually want quality reading, not just jam-packed keywords, which used to work with links to every vacuum cleaner for sale.
Not being an expert, just by pure my own experience, I think some of those things that used to be, like we just said earlier, maybe interesting because nobody else wanted to make the time. I'm pretty convinced myself that they will be taken over by AI. Right? Like it used to take somebody to say, okay, I somehow either get offered or I'm going out and get all these like vacuum cleaners or all these computers or all these phones or whatever, and then put the comparison on. And sometimes they got sponsored by a magazine or got sponsored by like big Best Buy or something. But in reality, since all the information about every product is available, that appears to me pretty easy to just program a bot and let them throw it out constantly as soon as there's any new product out there. I mean, I saw like with the launch of the iPhone 15, it took like 2 days and there were like 100 YouTube videos about it, so that stuff, it's more like what's the secret to, and then fill in the blanks. That will still be harder to do for anything that is just program software.
So something like a travel blog is great because it's experiential.
Right.
A summary of all the life insurance policies is just not very fun for anyone. So I keep away from that. And actually in our group calls, what we're doing every week is chatting about what we're learning, what we're doing. I'm off to a conference next week with the top brains of, what's happening with AI, ranking articles on Google and what we can do, what's best practice. So I'll feed that back. So all these things always evolve a bit. But I think if you've got a quality subject and a natural interest in it, then you can make a good business out of it. But really buying a business is just that fast forward to the end point of having a profitable online business, which is the holy grail for so many people who are stuck in a day job, because the cash flow is so good. It's very easy to maintain and operate anywhere in the world. So it gives you a good lifestyle. You can travel with these things. You can not only, actually, this is a good point. Not only do you get to live wherever you want to while you own these businesses, you can actually, if your business relates to some interest you have, a lot of your expenses can go through that business. If you're really working on that travel blog, then suddenly a bunch of your travel expenses are paid for.
Yeah, for you, it will be definitely a business trip to visit the cave, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's great. So I want to ask you those last two questions that I asked everybody. The first one of which, and they're totally unrelated to buying a business or getting Sophie's course. The first one is, if you could meet anybody, who would it be and why?
Oh, I haven't read the Elon Musk autobiography that's just come back. Yeah. I've sort of flipped and flopped on him. Like, I admire him. I go, what a brain. So incredible to push those inventions out there. And then there's this bit of me that's like, I don't know if I like the guy at all. I just makes my skin crawl a bit sometimes. And I was like, would he be in real life? It would be the only way you could figure out if you like him or despise him. But he's quite polarizing. And I used to be a fangirl when he was just, invention after invention. And then he's obviously not great with the media. And he's a bit naughty with all his investor sort of statements, with all those things he says. He's a bit outrageous. But I think it certainly wouldn't be boring to meet Elon Musk. And it would be pretty hard to do. So.
I would go on that trip with you. I'm probably still in the fanboy club. I have a suspicion on completely no evidence other than my own thinking and observation is that we are completely not used to having a person who remained relatively normal as he was probably 20, 30, and 40 years ago. Well, maybe 40 is a little bit of a stretch, but let's say 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. Instead of adopting this kind of corporate persona that everybody literally, I don't know anyone of any kind of symptom, but doesn't even have to be anywhere nearly as big a company, or, let alone having bunches of companies, that hasn't cloaked him or herself in this kind of weird, unusual, they can't talk normal anymore. They seem to be, when you look at them, they seem to be thinking about every word and how that could land on CNN or something like that. Yeah. And half of them have turned into pseudo politicians and stuff. So I think part of what you said, and I'm with you on this, is I'm always asking myself, is he just himself? And that makes it so weird for normal people to listen to it, because fundamentally,
was it an act? Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, if it were an act, this is my thing. I'm the weird kind of guy who goes back and looks at like an interview 5 years ago or 8 years ago, and it was the exact same way.
Yeah.
It just nobody paid attention. Now every word that he utters is being basically turned around in 100,000 different blogs and YouTube channels and what have you, and Twitter and whatever. So yeah, I wonder sometimes if it's just we are not used to having somebody just stay normal.
It's quite refreshing.
There was this one interview that I saw a little while ago, it's probably like 6 months or 12 months ago, where he was interviewed in the big factory. And the interviewer basically asked him, like this and that and so forth. And he literally said, I say what I say the way I think about it, and I don't care what other people think about it. And I guess you have to be like probably the richest person in the world to be able to say, I can live with not caring. And he goes, what if I don't want to do anything anymore tomorrow and just buy myself an island and that's it? Yeah. So anyway, so I think it's cool that, you were, I still am like a fan, would go and go.
I think I am. That's why I'd like to meet him. I think, he's certainly not any range of normal that you get to experience.
The guy never does vacation, but I would think to really be able to judge that, what you brought up, you would have to spend like a week or something like that. I don't think a single meeting for 30 minutes would really answer the question, So.
No, you'd have to, just get him outside his work beast mode. But yeah, incredible work ethic and incredible brain. And
yeah, I wonder if there's actually,
there.
You honestly think there is a second mode? I wonder if that's only the one, one and only. All right, cool. So the last question, trust me, that's really the last question. And that is, if you had a time machine and you could go anywhere you wanted, can't change anything, obviously, but if you could take a time machine, where would you go and why?
I think London in the 60s would have been pretty wild.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I'd have had a lot of fun. I think that was my natural time and place. I think.
That would be cool. And that was before they had all the cameras. You could do anything.
Yeah. No Facebook to catch you out later. Nobody snapping on their iPhones. But yeah, what a liberating time. I mean, the fashion and the music and just that counterculture kicking in. And that would have been wild times. I'd have loved to have seen that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and that's a new one. I've been, like I said in the beginning, done this now more than 100 times, and nobody had said that. So congratulations on that choice. All right, Sophie. So tell us, what can people do if they have now gotten excited to maybe buy a business or learn how to buy a business, take your course, get your ebook? What should they do?
Well, first step's probably to download the free book. So we'll pop a link to that in the show notes, and then you can see some of the deals I've done, like over my shoulder. I'll go through step by step how I found it, what I paid, how much money it's making now, and I track all that. So you can see that it's real and it works, but also once you see some more real examples, you'll sort of see what's out there and how it works. And then what we do for anybody who's serious about learning more about it is we've got a program called Freedom Navigator, and it takes you through the 10 sort of core steps you need to understand, like how the strategy works, where to look for the deals, how to negotiate and buy them, what's a good deal. And then also on each individual deal that you do, we'll do a deal review with you, and one-on-one we'll go and research all the Google data and the tech it's built on and the size of the market and the niche in your competitors, and we'll give you a really good game plan for that site and then help you buy it, not financially, but moral support.
Right. Well, and procedural, I would assume, to avoid mistakes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we help you feel more confident. You've done the study, you've seen lots of other people's examples by this stage, and then when it's your turn, we'll all come in and help you. And then as you pick it up and start running with it, we'll give you as much help as you need and point you off in the different directions. I mean, I can't be a specialist in everything. So if you need a designer, we'll tell you who we use. So we've got lots of referral partners and friends out there who look after our students, like copywriters at an agency or whatever you need. So we make sure you're in good hands and you know what you need to do. And then whether you choose to be really hands-on and upskill yourself or outsource the lot and behave like a really rational and, hands-off investor managing a new class of asset, it's basically just an alternative asset class. It's just not that commonly talked about, but there's best practice. There's best practice for the buying bit and also for the maintenance and ongoing ownership and building a portfolio. So wherever you fall in that spectrum of completely sort of wanting to do it all yourself right through to building an outsourced portfolio, we can help you do that. And students are choosing great sites, doing really good work. We've got a really friendly community. It's very open and, we always, keep out of each other's deals, but, offer feedback and we coordinate really nicely. So it's been a really, really fun thing to do for me because every deal is exciting and fun, and there's more deals out there than I can possibly do. So really happy to help you find some.
Yeah, that's actually very cool, and I appreciate that because one of the things when people in our audience say, how did you end up inviting Sophie to be on the show? And my answer would be because I think what you're offering in a way is somewhat similar to the turnkey approach that we have in our real estate investing. Not that that's the only way. Obviously, anybody that wants to work with us can also learn how to do flipping or learn how to do wholesaling. But the real true strategy is to say, okay, we find a property that is managed by someone else, you buy it and get it financed, and everything else is outsourced. And like you just called it, like you're basically an investor. And when you've done that and it starts running, you look for the next one.
Yeah, it's a great business model. The returns are really good. If you had a Venn diagram of being an investor and being an entrepreneur, it's the bit in between the two. You've got to be good with the money and the financial decision making. and you've got to buy. My strategy is buy and hold. There's other people that buy websites and flip them. There's others that develop them from scratch. It's exactly like property.
Yeah.
So I buy and hold a portfolio, and I teach people how to do that. But if you wanted to do a bit more of the building or a bit more of the selling, you could do that later. But I think my strategy obviously is the best because that's what I do with my own money. So I only teach what I do myself. So that's what we can do, isn't it?
Exactly me, and I only buy and hold either. So Sophie, that's why we like each other. No? Okay, cool. Well, thank you for having time on the show, and maybe we can do it again in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Axel. Lovely to have a chat with you, and thank you very much. And go and grab your free copy of Freedom Navigator from the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.